Okay, friends, open your books. We are on page 91. Okay, we're in the middle of a discussion of Olam Haba, how the next world is not another destination, we say. Olam Haba is the result of your deeds in this world. So you're creating, if you want, the tree in this world, and Olam Haba are the fruits that come from your own personal tree. Nadine, do you mind closing the door, please? Thank you so much. Your own personal Olam Haba. Whatever you create in this world is what you take into the next world. Create your own Olam Haba. It's not like this Western Christian image that you go somewhere and there's like pearly gates and there's clouds and there's babies playing harps and flying around and shooting arrows, all this complete drivel. That is not the Jewish concept any way, shape or form. You are your own Olam Haba. We're going to look at a Gemara today, which is a long discussion, which the Gemara actually, strangely enough, does not even conclude. It just kind of leaves it as an unanswered question. It goes backwards and forwards, giving both sides to this question. But it's a pretty wild Gemara, because it tells the story of a man who got into a fight with his wife, walked out of the house, and spent the night in I know this famous Gemara in Brachot? You know this one? A cemetery. Very, very famous Gemara. He spends the night in a cemetery. So off he goes. Says, why does he sleep in a cemetery? I always wondered that. Couldn't go to a friend's house and crash on his couch after he's kicked out for the evening. So, I can't remember who said this, but I read somewhere that he realized that he needed to humble himself a little bit, and there's no more humbling experience than, you know, that when you go to a cemetery, like Lalenu, and you go to visit someone or whatever, we know where all of us are going to end up. So it's part of his humbling process. Okay, whatever reason, he goes to the cemetery, spends the night there. While he's there, says the Gemara in Brachot, he hears a conversation between two spirits. Now, once again, this is a conversation. This is a conversation that he overhears. The Gemara is trying to figure out whether the dead are aware of what's happening in this world. That's what the Gemara is trying to figure out. And this is the part of the discussion, or a major part of the discussion, of this story of the man in the cemetery who hears these two, spirits, or you could even say ghosts. I don't know what they are. But they are the ghosts of two young girls that died young. Okay? So he goes, it's a wild Gemara by the way, and he spends the night at the cemetery, and he hears two spirits. Holech b'beit hakavarot, v'shama shtei ruchot. He hears two spirits. Shemisapra zuluzu, were talking to each other. How he overhears them, I don't know. Why do you only hear this in a cemetery? Because we know that the soul of a person, to some degree, still remains with the body even after. A part of the soul remains with the corpse after a person dies. Some say only temporarily, until the body is fully decomposed, which is why we want the body to decompose as quickly as possible. Actually, one of the names for a tombstone, right, is a nefesh, to remind us that the nefesh is still inside the grave itself. Okay, so he somehow is able to hear this conversation between these two spirits. One said to the other, come. Amra chada lechaverata. One said to the other, chaverasai. Boy, let's go. V'nashut. Let's wander around ba'olam in the world. So they want to go and wander around the world. V'nishma, and let's listen. This is actually an expression, by the way, you hear quite a lot. Achorei hapargud, from the other side of the curtain. Let's go listen to what's happening on the other side of the curtain. Right? Uma puranut balam, to what suffering and challenges are going to come to the world. So this expression means they are going to wander around and they're going to be able to hear what decrees are made in Shemayim that are going to come upon earth. Okay? So that's what some way they're going to go the other side of the curtain to hear what's going to be happening on earth. So this is part of the discussion of, are the dead aware of what happens in this world? So there's two ways to understand this. One opinion is that they are aware, or they tried to figure it out, but were not privy, right, to that information, I guess you could say. And some say that they figured it out by hearing comments from people in this world, or maybe people who died and came back and gave them messages. There's a lot over here, which I can't, it's a long, long Gemara. Fascinating, you can look it up, by the way. Backwards and forwards. In the end, there is no resolution, although the Marsha, one of the commentators at the back of the Gemara, says some people are aware, great tzaddikim, and most people don't even care what's happening. It doesn't bother them. It doesn't interest them, really, about what's happening in this world. But the Gemara does not give a conclusion as to where they are or not. Whatever. So there they are, and they go around, they want to see what's happening. Basically, make a long story short, they found out there was going to be certain rains. He overhears this, and he starts to invest money based upon, what a Jew, makes money based upon what he hears, and he becomes a very wealthy individual. A very wealthy individual. And his wife wants to figure out why, but he keeps his mouth shut. Eventually he admits to his wife how he made this money, because he got information from the other world. That's how he got him rich. His wife ends up speaking to the mothers of these two girls, making a certain comment to her, those two mothers that were not so nice, and they ended up they realized they were being listened to, and he didn't hear them again. But he made a lot of money by listening to this conversation. He got to know what stocks were going up this year and going down this year, where Apple was going up or down, or whatever it was. That's the Gemara, by the way, in length. Anyway, so I mentioned this Gemara because Rabbi Destler is going to use this Gemara based upon what I'm about to tell you to reveal something very, very fascinating about this world and Olam Haba. And it goes like this. She says, I can't go travel around the world. One of them says to her friend, you go because I'm buried, right? Eini yachola shani kavura b'machatzelet shel kanim. I am still buried in a matting of reeds. She was buried in very, very, I guess this must have been before there was a gazette. People used to be buried in expensive clothing or stuff. They changed that, so everyone should be buried exactly the same, in shrouds, in tachrich, white shrouds, which have no pockets. That became the general law for all Jewish people, or a talit, whatever. Okay? But this may have been a time when they didn't do that. Some say it's actually referring to the fact that her body hadn't decomposed yet and she was still embarrassed. So she did not want to travel around because she was either buried in very cheap clothing or her body hadn't fully decomposed. Okay? The obvious question is, she's dead. No one can see her. What's she embarrassed about? That's the question this Gemara, the Rabbi Destlers is about to ask, and they give a very fascinating answer. Okay? So she says, I cannot go, because I'm still buried in this earth. Ella lechi, you go at, uma set shemat, amrin, whatever you hear, you tell me. So she comes back with a message, tells this other spirit, he overhears, makes business decisions based upon it, and then, what a great way to become a millionaire. Listen to ghosts speaking. How cool is that, right? Okay? That was a joke, that last part. She says, I cannot travel around because I'm not fully dressed. I'm embarrassed by what I'm wearing. Actually, this man's wife went to this woman and said to the mother of these girls and said, look how you buried your daughter. My husband overheard this conversation and she's embarrassed. So she ended up realizing, and these girls...
embarrassing to tell?
Trying to do a chesed to this dead person. Anyway, because wherever you go, whatever you hear, you tell me. Okay, so the bit I'm going to laser focus on, there's a lot I said I know, but the bit we're going to focus on, Ray Destlers, are basically these two girls, as part of the conversation, I think I mentioned this later, said, by the way, someone's about to die, could you tell them to bring me my makeup? and my hair products. What are you talking about? You're dead. Why would you want your makeup? So listen to Rav Destlers' words. Rav Destler was a great Jewish thinker and Kabbalist, by the way. He knew a lot of deep esoteric ideas and made them very, very, from before and after the Second World War. He read a lot of books. You can read them even in English, was translated. And he says like this: let me explain something about life in general, Olam Haba, and what we learn from this Gemara. So follow carefully. And he starts with a very enigmatic statement that I would highlight because it's the kind of question I put in your final. Ratzon ha'adam hu mehuto. A person's desire is their essence. Ratzon, the desire, ha'adam, of a person, hu mehuto, that is their essence. Your muhut, your muhus, is your what you desire. What you want in life is really what you are. Okay? That's really your essence. V'zot, l'dat, and you should know, ki en mitat haguf, that the death of the body does not meshane, change, be'etzem, in essence, et matzava hapinim shalom, the essence of a person. That doesn't change us. It just removes the body. The spirit is still there. Harasha, for example, a wicked person, shebizman chaye, during their life, havla, got involved in hevel, nonsense, vanity. Hevel, actually, the word literally means steam, stuff that looks and feels real but isn't real. But it generally means vanity, from, Shlom HaMelech, hevel havalim, yeah. Havla, davak haya bedimion. The wicked people attach themselves to imagination, to non-reality, to false and fake desires and thoughts, and that's a wicked person. They're not involved in anything of the spirit. They're only interested in physicality and acquiring more physicality and taking care of them, not the spirit. Gam, you should know that also, when that person's soul separates from their body, nisharhu davek bedimyono. You don't suddenly become a tzaddik when you die. You're the same person, just without a body. Do you understand? Just the body is the case, it's the clothing. But when you take the clothing off, it's still you. You're still there in your imaginary world. By the way, he mentions elsewhere in a few places, it's not his idea, it's mentioned about something called Kafa Kehila, which probably should have mentioned this in our spooky class. Kafa Kehila means the slingshot. The people who constantly chase vanity in this world, when they die, they still want vanity, but they can't achieve it because they're dead. They don't have a body that can get hold of it. So they fling themselves from one end of the world to the other, trying to grab, but they can't get it. It's called the slingshot. Kafa Kehila. Scary. That's where ghosts come from, I don't know. Okay? So he said that's a wicked person is just interested in physicality, but when they die, they still want it, they can't get it. But they're still the same person. Mikevan she'eno motze et sipuko. But since they can't satisfy that desire, yishtokeku elav kol od yoter. They will lust after them all the more because they're going to want it more and more, but they can't get it. V'yimaleh ravonatzum, and they're going to have a tremendous appetite to satisfy their desire, but they can't do anything about it. That's Gehenna. He mentions, right? So he says, so look at our Gemara we just mentioned, he says. Okay? Because you can see this idea in action on a very, very small scale. And what's that? Sharuchot. You know there's two spirits, he says, in the Gemara? He's quoting our Gemara. So those two spirits having a conversation. Right? They wanted to know from the other side of the curtain, what's happening in this world. They were interested in what's happening in this world. Why would they be interested in this world? They've left it. They're not who cares? they've gone. Alonon, be'imyanei hagashmiut, about the physical facts, right? The guy's going to talk about what's going to have rain this year and it's going to have good winds and bad winds. Why do you care about the weather patterns and the financial success? It's like a person dying and being like, what's happened with Apple stock? What's going on with Bitcoin? What do you care? You're dead. You can't invest anyway. I mean, you can tell me where it's going, but I'd appreciate that if anyone's listening out there, but because I'm still stuck in this world, right? The Yotem is not only that, Sh'ota Ruach, this spirit, later on the Gemara, which I didn't bring down, that same spirit, Shayita Kavura, B'machsel, she was buried in a mat of reeds, which supposedly is not a good thing. Shel Kanyam of reeds, right? Nit by Shamazeh, she was embarrassed. Who are you embarrassed of? No one can see you. You're in the ground, you're dead. What is going on? And he says, Hare, Haragishot HaKavod, because that feeling of honor that she wanted, that she felt while she was alive, because when we're alive we care about honor, people think of us, Nish'aru Mima Mamash Ke B'olam Hazeh, like she was in this world. So he's bringing down this Gemara to show that when your body and soul separates at death, it's not like off you go and you're floating around. Some people, those people who make this into their essence, right? Ratzon Adam Muhuto, the essence of a person becomes the desires of a person. If that was your desire, that's who you are. It's not saying these two girls were bad. It's just saying this is what it is. You're still connected. It takes time. Rabbi Kaplan speaks about this. It takes time for your body and soul to separate and to negotiate the new environment you find yourself in. Right? That's what's going on. So these girls were embarrassed because they weren't embarrassed in that world. There is no embarrassment in that world. Right? But they were feeling what they felt in this world because that's what you are. The next world is just basically you and all your desires. If you desire good in this world, you'll be desiring good in the next world. You'll be able to enjoy the good. In this case, there were two young girls, La'aleinu, who died, and they still wanted their makeup and were embarrassed about their looks. Crazy Gemara, no? Yeah? Questions, thoughts, comments, any of that? Yeah.
So it's about your desire, not your actions?
Well, your actions are a result, hopefully, of your desires, but then maybe not, right? Maybe not. Maybe your actions you just do, right? And you don't desire to do them, you do them anyway. But in that world, there is no world of action, because that's olam asiyah, that's only in this world. Then it's just like what you made your desires into. What did you really want in this world? I mean, people want stuff and can't even do it in this world, right? But what is your desires is what you take into the next world.
So if you want something but you don't act on it, you go in with that?
If you want something but never acted upon it, you get to bring that into olam haba. This is not talking about reward and punishment. It's just talking about the mitziyut. The existence of this desire is really what you take to the next world.
So are you going to take it if you never... Like if somebody has a goal and they just never got to do it?
No, you have to actually do actions. In order to get rewarded, you need to actually mitzvah. Unless you're prevented, right? And then we say machshava k'maaseh, a person's thought process is as though they actually did it. But that's when they actually took a step in order to get it. Yeah. It's a difficult Gemara.
Let's say, like, this is like a stupid example, but like, let's say someone has a desire to eat like donuts, but then they also have a desire to be healthy, so they control their actions, but like their deepest desire is to eat the donuts.
I hear. But they overcame it and didn't.
Yeah. So I'm saying, is that like their essence?
Their essence is their desire.
Which one?
The donut.
Yeah, and then what happens? You go to the next world just wanting donuts forever?
It's kind of like...
It's like Homer Simpson in the next world.
It's kind of like, I feel like a comparison for the donuts could be like, you don't, for example, I don't like you don't like your mother-in-law, maybe. Sorry to bring that up. But your actions counteract that and you still do the
Well,
proper
the actions...
thing.
then
And
it
if
becomes.
you get yourself to a place where you like her and you build on that relationships, then that could become your
I
desire.
mean, he's not talking about bad things. That's the weird thing. This Gemara and his explanation of it is basically saying they weren't bad. It's just, this is what comes. These girls wanted makeup, so they were still asking for makeup. They weren't bad. It's not like reward and punishment. It's just explaining how your neshama doesn't go through some manifestation, some kind of change. I mean, death does bring a kapara to the soul, there's no doubt about it, just the separation of the body and soul. It's just saying that what you are in this world is what you take into the next world. If your desires are good, right, and your actions you're rewarded for, or bad things you're punished for. But in the end, it's just what you become, it's what you take into you. It doesn't last this forever. Right?
What about your character traits?
Well, that's who you are. You are your character traits.
So
That's
your
where we work on our
soul
character
is
traits.
that?
Hmm?
You go into the next world with that?
Yeah.
Like if you're an angry person, you have that trait still?
Yeah.
Even if you try to overcome it, like you spend.
Well, if
everything-
you try to overcome it with something else, then you get rewarded for that, and you get siyata dishmaya, get up in Hashem, I think. I guess, I don't know.
But how could it be that you have bad traits if your souls keep on coming into this world?
Well,
Like,
okay, now you bring in reincarnation, don't make it so difficult. Right? Every time a person, forget reincarnation for a second. You're obsessed. Wow, how Sephardi are you? No. We're saying that you just come to this world, everyone's got their mission in this world. That could be to overcome a bad character trait, to overcome desires, to help someone else. We said there's various reasons. That's not what he's saying here. You should just know that Olam Haba, the whole point of this was Olam Haba is not the location. It's just you. You take yourself there. If you made spirituality your main desire, we have to get involved in physical stuff. Got to eat and sleep and work and do lots of physical stuff. But that's my desire in order to help me achieve the spiritual.
It's like your shiva.
This is not my reward or punishment. This is just telling you what's going to happen. This is just the result of being in this world and then going to the next world. There's traces that stay with you. It doesn't say forever. I don't think this is their reality forever. Yeah.
Does this also prove that you could talk to other dead people when you're dead?
We said, yeah. I mean, we learned from that piece we saw that, the first thing you do when a person dies, they see their loved ones. They gather to their people, right? So you're able, once the body goes, right? The body is that thing which is preventing us from connecting to other souls, right? That's what's preventing it. We discussed already, I think we did. Once the body goes, you're able to connect to all the other souls and communicate. Are you talking to them as we're talking right now? I don't think it's actual talking. There's definitely communication, right? Rabbi Kaplan has the whole thing in terms of seeing, right? You're able to see things, but not the way we understand seeing right now. There's a perception, there's an understanding. Just like you see things in your mind, you see things in your dreams. Are you seeing them? When you're asleep, they're there in your dreams, right? It's like, I'm actually seeing it. You're not seeing it the way you normally see things. So sleeps and dreams are like teaching us a little bit about, how we relate to stuff. These questions are above my pay grade, by the way. I'm just being the same piece of Torah that you are, and you understand it any way you want. All right? Spirits, ghosts, talk to each other. What happens when you die? I'm just reading it. But that's how Rav Destlers. I had to bring that down because it's a classic piece. Mentioned in a few places the same idea. Yeah? Okay. So, according to this, you would have thought that, well, what's better? Olam hazeh, olam haba. So in some sense, olam hazeh is actually. Because in this world, you get to achieve stuff, right? And that's what it says in Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, olam hazeh, Domen LeProsdo, we said, this world is like a ante-chamber, or lobby, a corridor, that prepares us for olam haba. As it prepares itself in the corridor. And then it says, where Omer, Yafa sha'acha b'teshuva u'masim tovim elazeh. Better one moment of teshuva, of repentance and good actions in this world, mikol chayil haba, more than the entire next world. one moment of good deeds in this world is better than all of Olam Haba. Because in Olam Haba, you can't do anymore. But then, the Yafeh Sha'achat Shel Korei Ruach Olam Haba, but that feeling of satisfaction in Olam Haba is better than Kol Chayil Hazeh, more than all the pleasures of this world. If you were to cover and gather together every single physical and maybe emotional and psychological pleasure too in this world that you've ever experienced and put it into one moment, it doesn't equal one moment of pleasure in Olam Haba. So that's the mirror image. Better one moment of action in this world than all of Olam Haba. Because in Olam Haba, you've got nobody to do Masim Tovim. Yeah? But better one moment of God recognition in Olam Haba than all the more pleasure in that one moment than all the pleasures of this world. Yeah? And we mentioned this piece of Gemara from Sanhedrin already on page 93. Kol Yisrael, every single member of Bnei Yisrael, yesh lam chelek l'olam haba, has a chelek in olam haba. Okay. Now, we mentioned already that it says yesh lam chelek l'olam haba, and not ba olam haba. Ba means in, la means towards. It's not the same for everyone. It's not a destination that we go to where we get to enjoy. Although we understand it that way, that's not what it is. So how do we secure a... Yeah?
There's a question. In Olam Haba, what's the difference between like us and angels? Like if
Well,
we can't...
so I don't know, but I know the angels didn't achieve any of it. We had to achieve it. We are greater than angels. That's standard. Angels for us are spiritual robots. Like animals are physical beings that run on instinct, have no free will. Angels have no free will. It's got we achieve. We have to work in Olam Hazeh in order to get to Olam Haba.
Only in this world, because in Olam Haba we don't have free will.
Yeah, they're moving
No, but we've
forward.
achieved it in this world, and you're taking your spirit with you over there. So what you achieve in this world is what you take into the next world. Alright? Make sense? You achieve. They don't have to achieve anything. It's like two people top of a mountain. One got delivered there by helicopter, one schlepped their way up to the side for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Obviously.
What about now that we're both up there? And
So we get the Korah Ruach more than they do. And I don't know what they feel, I don't know. We get the satisfaction of achievement, right? Which is one of the reasons we said that Adam HaRishon sinned in the Garden of Eden because he was feeling a bread of shame that he didn't achieve anything. It was just given to him. Yeah.
Are we still like servants of God?
Sure.
Isn't that what the angels are? They like,
Yeah, but we had to go through.
yeah, but we don't have this law anymore. Sometimes.
Well, we do, but then we have a different purpose. We do, but have a different purpose. Look, the angels also serve God, whatever it means. You know, they do shirah. I mentioned last class those were with us, right? I mean, my prayer class. Right? Angels, malachim, sing to Hashem. There's a certain, they're considered kadoshim. The akadosh prayer, atakadosh prayer, the kadoshim. One opinion is they're angels. Yeah.
I thought the world to come was after Mashiach.
So we said there's three different understandings of Olam Haba. That's a holding station of the world of souls until Mashiach comes and resurrection comes again. Right? Different interpretations of what Olam Haba actually means. So how do we secure a front row seat into Olam Haba? So the Gemara says that very famous Gemara, I'm sure Rebbeim in yeshivas you grew up if you went, always taught you this. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol ha'oseh mitzvah achat b'olam hazeh, whoever does one mitzvah in this world, Magdemuto v'olech lefnei olam haba, right, precedes him and goes into the next world. And he quotes Isaiah the prophet, chapter 58:8, V'halach lefanecha tzidkecha, your righteousness will go before you. His righteousness goes before him. What does that mean? That you take, the only thing you take into Olam Haba, you can't take although many nations and cultures and societies have tried to take their money to Olam Haba, and they get buried with all their stuff. You got to turn that off. Okay? Okay. So, although you cannot take your money and things into Olam Haba, you can take your Ma'asim Tovim, your good deeds, into Olam Haba. Okay? So your righteousness is always going to go for you. So that's what you take into Olam Haba with you. So your mitzvot themselves are actual things that testify in your behalf. Did you ever hear this as a kid? Never mentioned this to you when you were a child? You take a mitzvah with you to Olam Haba. I'm sure you heard this. This is like, they said you take a mitzvah with you. Okay? And they testify before you. Amr Rav Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua ben Levi says, page 94, Kol mitzvah Yisrael osim b'olam hazeh, any mitzvah that you do in this world, but are going to come with you, and testify in Olam Haba. So there is when I was a kid, I always had these images in my head, right? The mitzvot stand before you, and it doesn't mean they literally speak, but they speak of what you're trying to achieve, or what you did achieve in this world. They become your testimony. They are the only lasting legacy you have. Takes you to Olam Haba are your mitzvot. I mean, by the way, even your physical deeds that you did in order to bring mitzvot, right? So even the business you ran, right, or whatever it is, if it was done for spiritual purposes, will testify in Olam Haba. Yeah.
When you say Olam Haba, you're talking about Olam HaNeshamot?
Olam HaNeshamot, and then Olam Haba in the future.
You're talking about both of those right now?
Yeah. One is a personal, and the other is a national. Olam Haba for everyone.
Is there going to be a point that, not after Mashiach, that like there will no longer be like a physical world?
We don't know. There's going to be some kind of change. We saw the Ramchal has talked about the 8th millennia, where we have no idea what it's going to be like. That's beyond our understanding. We don't know. We don't even know Tchiat HaMeitim. It says, we don't know how it's going to be performed. We have no idea. The prophets spoke about it, so it's a principle of our faith, but we don't even know when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. We have this, a loose bone, we'll see, but very little is known. Very, very little is known. So after that, what's going to happen? If we all become like, I don't know, artificial intelligence, or kind of parts of a big cosmic computer, you know? We're all like part of Pac-Man. I don't know what's going to be. I'm just trying to figure out, just to make it. By the way, that's one of the reasons we don't speak about Olam Haba in the Torah. You better focus on today. So the Torah says, Hayom, today. We focus on today. If you think about tomorrow, I might freak it out. Okay, let's have a look at another piece of Torah. It says the Sefer Ikrim, you shall observe the mitzvot, okay, so that you can live. We've already mentioned this already. Yeah? And he says this without doubt, referring to the individualized spiritual reward. This is it, right? Alexander, you just said that each person will receive. God ordered each person to observe all the chukim mishpatim, the statutes and the ordinances, that they would involve more effort, observing the laws of the land, much more important than the secular laws that we have in this world, because although the laws of Egypt, Canaan, America, France, Russia, to some degree keep societies going, nevertheless they don't offer you Olam Haba. So Chukim and Mishpatim offer us Olam Haba. That's the given. That's our ticket in. General mitzvot. Okay? That's the idea. So we have laws in this world, but they are just there to maintain this world. They aren't there to prepare us for Olam Haba. And that's the living. Something that any other legal system does not give us. So the Torah is not just a legal system, it's an entrance into Olam Haba. I mean, there's a lot of sources that say this kind of thing. Okay, we kind of said this already, this piece, where Rav Chaim Volozhin says the same thing. And let's talk about Torah study. So there's certain mitzvot that have a little bit more oomph when it comes to preparing us for Olam Haba. And number one is Torah study. Studying Torah, which is the only way you're going to learn to do mitzvot, because you can only learn to do mitzvot by studying Torah, whether you're reading it or hearing it or whatever, right? So it says in Pirkei Avot, Kanesh Shem Tov, if you acquire for yourself a good name, you're acquiring something good for yourself. You want a good name. You want people to mention your name like, oh, she's nice. Oh, he's nice. That's what you want in life. However, but if you acquire words of Torah, you've acquired the next world. So you won't have a good name, right? But if you acquire Torah, you get Olam Haba as well. Okay? So learning Torah, says the Gemara, guarantees a person a good chelek in Olam Haba. Okay? As we say, learning Torah in order to do, not just to learn it as an academic study. Right? It's not Bible studies at, Michigan University. It's studying Torah so you can act upon it and become a better person and learn to do mitzvot. Right? That's a very famous expression that you should. The Prophet says that you will have better halichot, better ways, and they learn out, it means halachot, laws. That's what the word halacha means, to go. It's the same lashon, because you'll go and become a better person. Okay? Okay, and other Gemara, which I don't need to go into right now, but I will mention this another part of Gemara that says that learning Torah is great, but the greatest thing you can do is enable other people to learn Torah, right? And that can be anyone, even your own kids. And even if you don't do it, but pay someone else to do it, that is the greatest mitzvah. Teaching Torah and sharing Torah ideas with other people, friends, family, children, even your teacher, right? Doesn't matter what you do, you have opportunity to do that. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. According to Rav Sheshet, anyone who teaches Torah in this world will merit teaching it to the Olam Haba. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good. And there's a very fascinating Gemara about someone called Rav Preda. This is this story.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you said that like if you learn Torah, you acquire life in Olam Haba, but
Yeah.
everyone acquires life in Olam Haba.
So it's the amount. It's how you experience Olam Haba. It's not a place, it's how you experience it.
It's like the spiritual.
Yeah, satisfaction the person gets. Rav Preda had a student. Is that your hand up or are you stretching? Yes, Ilana.
So if someone learns Torah but they're still not like they're still doing bad things.
Well, we're all learning Torah, all doing bad stuff still. You're not meant to be an
Yeah,
angel.
but like you know how there's certain sins that like you don't go to Olam Haba.
No.
I thought there was.
No. You've got a person has to really, there have been people in history who supposedly lose the Chelek Olam. You've got to work really, really, a person has to work very, very, very hard. A person get karet chas v'chalila by eating, thank you, on Pesach, chas v'chalila, or sleeping with a woman who's a nida, or by eating food in Yom Kippur. But those are all teshuvah. No one ever loses. Losing on Olam Haba is very, 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 very difficult. A person's got to be really, really, really bad. Okay, so don't panic about that one. Okay, fine. So Rav Preda had I like this Gemara. I remember it often. He had a student who was really, really weak student. So when he taught him Torah, he taught him a lesson once, and then twice, and then 100 times, and 200 times, and then 300, and then 400. It took 400 times for this kid to get any information. By the way, what a rabbi, can you imagine that? I could repeat myself twice to my students who were getting ready to shoot myself. 400 times. That's what it says. Rabbi Preda hayalo hayo talmida dahave tanele arba ma'od zimne. 400 times. Gamar. Yom achada, one day, bayala lemilta de mitzvah. He was involved in some mitzvah performance, right, that he had to do right after class. And what did he do? He was a little bit, he wasn't teaching so well. Even teachers get bad days, they're not. He was distracted. Rav Preda was distracted. So what did he do? He taught this young boy 400 times. And at the end of 400 times, the kids didn't understand this one concept. So he said, well, usually 400 times is the limit. Usually get it by now. He said, so what do the boys say? So he says, I felt that today you were preoccupied and you were confused, and I kept thinking that you have to leave at any minute, so I couldn't concentrate. You were acting weird and you weren't settled, and so the 400 times weren't good enough. So what does he do? What would you do?
Teach you something else.
That's your problem, dude. I'll teach you 400 times. You didn't listen 400 times. He's like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to sit down and I'll teach you 400 times again. And he went through the whole thing 400 times, teaching him exactly what he needed to know. And by the end of that, he got it. Says the Gemara about Rabbi Preda and this young boy. Nafka bat kala, a voice came out of heaven, right? A bat kol came out of heaven and said, Rabbi Preda, you're going to get rewarded for what you did for teaching this, obviously a weak student, right? The kid can't be so bright. Interesting, right? You get rewarded for teaching weak students. Everyone thinks, oh, you want to teach the best students. We'll learn this Gemara. You can get greatest reward by teaching weak students. So voice came out of heaven and said, would you prefer to have another 400 years added to your life as reward? That doesn't need to be understood literally. He didn't get to live to 400 or 520, whatever the mathematical equation is. It means that he would have achieved in the rest of his life, in terms of his actions, 400 times worth of reward and goodness, or that you and your entire generation should go to Olam Haba. Wow, what an offer. That's what he was offered. You can get personal satisfaction, or your actions can affect your entire generation. Which, by the way, people who teach Torah and learn Torah are not just affecting themselves, they're affecting everyone. He said, let me and my entire generation go to Olam Haba. And Hashem said to him, you know what? Since you went for that option, since you went to door B, you get what's behind curtain B and curtain A. And he ended up getting both. Right? Wow, it's a wild idea. One person can affect an entire generation through their acts. Imagine that. That means we could be here right now. There's many stories in the Gemara like this. And a person could do one thing in France which could actually be positively influencing us here in America. There is a spiritual ripple effect that is passing through the world as we speak. I mean, ergo, chas v'shalom, maybe one bad act over here could be affecting, other people in other places. Okay? So, the Gemara seems to indicate that there's a connection between Torah, and I always point out Torah to people who don't know Torah or find it difficult to learn. I learn with people who are in their 40s and 50s who are just learning to read Hebrew for the first but successful people, but billionaires, but and you're like, do it again. It's a wonderful thing. Right? There's a girl who was in the elevator this morning at 8 a.m. I was here. So where are you going? She goes, I have a chavrusa who's teaching me how to read and write Hebrew. Wow, do you know that? First of all, there's a thing called 8 a.m. Let's start with that, right? Let's start, right? Because maybe you're like, 8 a.m. There's a girl, I'm telling you. See? She sits right over there in my Mechina class. And there's, I don't know who the girl is, but the other girl, the teacher, there's a girl who sits with her and teaches her how to read and translate Hebrew. Isn't that nice?
It's so nice.
Wow. Okay, that's one thing. 2, tzedakah. There seems to be a strong connection between giving tzedakah and olam haba. Okay? I mean, all mitzvot are great, but we're just picking out a few of them that the rabbis connect specifically to olam haba. And look at this unbelievable story about someone called King Munbaz. He was a king. Now, I've been through kings of Israel. There isn't a king of Israel called King Munbaz. So who's this guy? Ever heard of him? King Munbaz? I think his mother was also, what was her name? Oh God. I think Helene was his mother. Is that right? Is that familiar? Queen Helene was his mother. And she and he were converts to Judaism. But he was a non-Jewish king who became Jewish and kept the title. Munbaz HaMelech gave away all of his money. Amad uvizvez kol nechasav la'aniyim, and threw all of his money away to poor people. Shalchu lo, I think he became Jewish. Shalchu lo karavav. His relatives wrote to him, Amrullah said to him, Wow, what are you doing? Why are you giving all your money away to poor people? Amrullah, they said to him, Avotecho sifu, your ancestors collected al shalhen, the al shalavotehen, to what their ancestors had. So we're trying to build wealth generation to generation. Vata, and you, bizbizata, you just throw it all away. You're affecting your descendants. Vet kalavatecha. And he said to them, you know what? Amalehem, I guess you should say, Kol shekain, avatai nignazu be'aretz. My ancestors stored, they did geniza on earth. Right? She'eno sin perot. But that doesn't give you any fruits. Vani ganasti otzerot shen oseperot. But I invested the money in something that's going to give great fruit. My ancestors put their money in storehouses that don't give interest, but mine do give interest. Because they stored on earth and I stored in heaven. My ancestors stored in a place where it could be stolen, but I stored in a place where my money is absolutely guaranteed not to be stolen or taken away. Yeah? My ancestors save money, but I save lives. Powerful statement. My ancestors save for others, but I've saved for myself. My ancestors saved in this world, but I save for Olam Haba. So every penny that I gave away was guaranteed interest, guaranteed safe, guaranteed not to be stolen, didn't need to be protected, and went into Olam Haba. It reminds me of a story I heard about, I think it was one of the Rothschilds, early Rothschilds, or one of the Reich, I can't remember who it was. He was interviewed, I told you the story before? By the London Times, and whatever it was, the early 1900s, whatever it was. So they said to him, he was a very, very wealthy individual, says, what are you worth? Right, that's what the journalists for the London Times. So he says, I'm worth, I don't know, £5 million. Right? So they were like, what are you talking about? What do you mean £5 million? You like own half of London. You're worth way more than that. He said, you asked me what I'm worth. He said, what I'm worth is what I gave away to tzedakah this year. That's my worth. You didn't ask me what I have. What I have is what I have in the bank or my property. But my worth is what I gave away. So it makes me think of Ging Munbaz. Right? That's your worth. Your worth is not what you have. So it's counterintuitive. But your worth is what you give and not what you've just managed to store yourself. Okay? So that's a Gemara. But there's many more Gemarot that give this idea of doing certain mitzvah. You're storing stuff yourself into your own personal olam haba. Yeah? Okay, we know that living in Eretz Yisrael and every Daled Amot person walks in Eretz Yisrael, they're guaranteed a place in Olam Haba. If that's your kavanah, if that's your intention, that's the schut of living in Israel. God willing, we all will one day. Finally, good character. Good character has the ability to take us into Olam Haba. And this was a famous discussion between Alexander the Great of Macedonia, which, by the way, we have Alexander in our class. Do you know how you got that name? How'd you get that name?
Alexander the Great.
How?
Oh.
You were named after him?
My parents told me that. I don't know.
Russians?
No.
I'll tell you where it comes from. The Jewish people had a very good relationship with Alexander the Great. And he came to Israel, the whole thing of Shimon Tzaddik, they met him. They made a decree, because of the gratitude they had towards him for not taking over the country. I mean, people who took over did, that's the whole Hanukkah story, right? But, perfect timing. But they made a decree that every baby born for a year, I think, would have the name Alexander. So Alexander is not a Jewish name per se, but it became a Jewish name because of Alexander the Great. So that's a name that's passed, in most cases, is passed down, right? That's coming from him. Okay, because of the good relation he had with the Jewish people. 1 year of boys, and it got passed down throughout history. To this day, you see many people with the name Alexander. Anyway, so he had this debate with the sages of the south. And one of the things he asked them was, in the Gemara, so Gemara discusses him a lot, but they see him as a genius, by the way. They see him as one of the greatest people, from the non-Jewish world. What should a person do to live in Olam Haba? What's the secret to Olam Haba? So they said to him, Yamit asmo, kill yourself. Wow, that's a harsh statement. Why should they kill themselves? So what they meant was, kill your character and yashpilat atzmo. You should diminish yourself, be humble. Humility is good. Ma yavid inish v'yamit v'yichiyeh et atzmo. What should a person do to die? Right? Yagber tatzmo. So if you want to die in Olam Haba, you should awaken yourself by glorifying yourself, i.e. become arrogant. So humility seems to be a core ingredient into preparing yourself for Olam Haba. Right? Being humble, not being full of yourself, not being a Baal Ga'ava. Right? And it can't be coincidence that the only way the greatest prophet that ever lived, Moshe Rabbeinu, is described in the Torah, is Ish Anavod, a very, very humble person. Right? Humblest person that ever lived. Yeah.
How does it say, and what should a person do to die, awaken himself?
I die in the next world, I not to enjoy the next world, is to awaken yourself, I glorify yourself in this world. So it's an arc, it's a mirror image. You kill yourself in this world, harm yourself in order to live in the next world, or how do you die in the next world? By being arrogant in this world. That's the Gemara with Rashi's interpretation. FYI. Yep. Okay. Says Rabbeinu Yonah of Gerona in Spain, in Sharet Shuvah. He says, how hard is death for the person who does not divorce from the desires of this world, his soul, until death separates him from them? Our sages have said that if your desire is not to die, then die so that you don't die. That's a good meme. Is your desire not to die, then die, i.e. humble yourself so that you don't die in the next world. That's basically what it means. That is, one who wishes the day of his death to lead to eternal life will resolve that since he is destined to leave this world and his bodily desires, and in the end to despise and reject them, he will abandon them in his lifetime and make use of his world only in the service of Hashem. Then his day of death will lead to a life without end. Okay. That's the famous concept. That is the epigram of the Sharet Shuvah that Rav Destlers speaks about. If you want to live true life of the Spirit, die to false desires that keep you away from your core mission as well as a Jew, which obviously is Torah mitzvot. And humility and modesty are the key traits for Olam Haba. I need to read that at least once a year. Right. Okay, let's stop over there because I'm hungry. And we will start next class looking at the 13 principles of the Rambam, which we've done many of, and how non-Jews get to Olam Haba as well. Will be next class. Yes, Alexandra.
The thing with desires, like to separate yourself from desires.